We're live and then we're live. There we go. Here we go. So this is United in Green. We are officially 2 minutes late tonight. That's not a problem. Will was looking for his dongle. And we can make jokes about that later on. But we're pleased to have our friend Will back. How you doing today, Will?
Doing well. I did find my dongle, so that's good to report in, and excited to be here tonight. Talk to our exciting guest and have a good time.
Yeah, and without any further ado, I won't tell you anything about my day because Will knows about my afternoon. I am a supporter of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club, as the reason for my name there. But so I had a really awful afternoon. But we'll get right to our special guest, Coach Pfeiffer. How you doing?
Doing well. Happy to be here. Excited to chat about the upcoming season and last year, obviously. So should be fun.
Every time we get on the pod and we these preseason pods are fun, especially for us because we get to meet a lot of the players and a lot of the faces that are around the club. And going forward, the structure might change a little bit once we get into the season. We start reviewing games and that kind of stuff. But for right now, it's super fun for us to get to know a lot of the faces that we saw last year. So getting right into it, I guess our first question is of our guests is always, what is your soccer origin story? And in your case, how did you go from there to get into coaching?
It was just kind of the natural progression for me when I stopped playing to continue on in the game. And, it had always been kind of my passion and what was, sort of drove me and made me happy, since I was probably 5 years old. So it's always been soccer. There's never really been, anything else that I've been very good at. And, so that was always kind of, my focus from a pretty young age. And, kind of, wound up just feeling like I said, it was the natural progression for me to go from, once I was done playing college, I tried to play for a little bit and had some injuries and stuff that probably didn't do a good enough job rehabbing from. It was just like, and at the time, soccer in the US was very different than it is right now. Just in terms of sort of the vision that a young player can have for a future in the game, is very different than it was, it's 20 years ago now. So that's changed quite a bit. And so for me, it made sense to get into coaching pretty soon after I was done playing.
So has the Vermont Green been your first experience coaching, or have you had other opportunities before this?
No, I've been coaching for probably 19 years now. Right again, like started out coaching club once I was done at BC, done playing, and then joined up at Boston College as a volunteer, and then went on to Northeastern as my first kind of full-time job in soccer. Continued on coaching club and at Northeastern. And then when my wife became the field hockey coach here at the University of Vermont, we moved up here and I volunteered for a couple of years actually at Middlebury with Dave Sayward, who was just a great guy to be around. And just as I was, kind of trying to get my feet, here in Vermont from a professional standpoint, started working with Nordic and then got a job at Norwich. I've been there since and, worked with Far Post a little bit. And then obviously, Matt and Pat and Sam and Keel and those guys came up with this incredible idea. And, here we are.
I've discussed this, or we've discussed this with our other guests, is, I think this is a town that's always been kind of not just a town, but like the area or the state itself, as American football kind of is starting to die and go by the wayside, with head injuries and that kind of stuff. People are turning their kids to soccer. So I feel like this is the perfect time for a project like this, and for the youth to be able to see that even in our small state that we can produce great soccer. And I think that a lot of people hear soccer in Vermont, it's kind of an afterthought, right? So I think that, like, when you guys have these nights where you're inviting some of these youth players and stuff and their families, it really solidifies that fact that a lot of these kids who are just getting into the sport are going to be, are going to be able to fall in love with the sport that they can see played professionally or semi-professionally, on a weekly basis in the summertime when they're off and they have the time to do that kind of stuff. How has your involvement with the youth programs, like through Nordic and Fire Post? My son is at Fire Post, and he actually is being coached by Stage right now. But how has that experience kind of shaped the way that you deal with these young college kids? I mean, is it different than, because my wife is a preschool teacher, an early childhood teacher. How different is it teaching the young kids versus these college kids who kind of have that knowledge base but are still kind of raw?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different, going from coaching, under 12s or under 13s to working with, the kids that I have, or the men that I have at Norwich, and then, the guys that we're working with at Vermont Green. Like, it's all different, right? I think, for me, when I came to Vermont, like, one thing that I noticed right away, and this is just, driving from, I was living in North Ferrisburgh to Burlington, was just how many you see stickers everywhere. And I would always see Nordic and Synergy and Far Post and Capital stickers on cars. And if you go to a farmer's market on a Saturday morning, like, you see kids in their Far Post uniforms. You see the orange, you see the green of Nordic, you'd see the red of Capital, you'd see the Synergy kids, like, red and yellow. And, I'd see these kids all over the place. And I couldn't help but kind of be, taken aback by that a little bit, coming from Boston, which is a place that, you see people in Red Sox uniforms or a Patriots shirt, or, the stickers it's a Patriot sticker, it's a Bruins sticker or whatever, like, on their cars, the bumper stickers. And here it was very different. Not that you don't see some of those, some of those professional, clubs and sports. It's just, here, the pride that people had for their hometown teams was very apparent. And I had also had a pretty, I had good experiences coming up here, playing against, when USL2 was the PDL, coming up here and playing against the Voltage years and years ago. And this was always our favorite place to come up and play, because there was a crowd at the games. Like, I played for the Cape Cod Crusaders. We had excellent teams and tons of future pros and future US internationals and future Jamaican internationals on that team. And when we would come up here, it was always really difficult to play, and it was always a great atmosphere to play in. And that was up in St. Albans. That wasn't even in Burlington. Like, we would stop off in Burlington and have lunch and spend some time on Church Street, and then go play a game and then head back. So I had always felt like there was I don't know if it's a market, but an appetite for soccer in the summer here, when there isn't quite as much going on in terms of UVM having the basketball team playing, or the hockey team playing, or the soccer team playing, the lacrosse team playing. Like, there's just not as much going on in that area. And it seemed like the perfect place to develop the right kind of club. And I think, again, like Matt and Pat and Sam and Keel and those guys, like, they understand Vermont, and have done an unbelievable job kind of creating a community club. And it's pretty, I think, for all of us that are involved in it, whether it's, you guys as supporters of the club, or the people that are involved in the technical side, or people that are involved in the the marketing and the environmental or social justice side of the club, or the players, of course. Everybody has the same kind of excitement. It's not just the players and the staff, or the people involved. It's everybody around the club is contributing to something that it truly feels special. And we're getting that a lot from people from the outside that we know in soccer, that are I get texts all the time from friends that a friend in Chicago, or a friend in Las Vegas, or a friend that's down in Texas, and somebody walks into a restaurant with a Vermont Green shirt on. They're just like, what is going on here? So it's pretty cool and pretty special. But I definitely think Vermont is the perfect place for USL2 club.
So I want to focus on sort of the start of last season. You come in, you've got all these guys, you've got a short period of time to really, grow and accomplish something. What was sort of the expectation from your perspective as far as performance through the season? Was this sort of an experiment, or did you come in, with expectations to make the playoffs as you did?
I think, if I'm being honest, like when we looked at the team coming into preseason, or not really preseason, but we got a few days before the season started, I think we felt like we were going to have the players to make the playoffs. It was just really a matter of, understanding that in USL2, like some of the players are going to get called home early, or called back to their college teams early. That's just reality. I'd had some experience with that as a player, but even more as a college coach. When I was at Northeastern, the concern that we had for a player playing, at that time, there were more games in USL2, or it was called the PDL then. They would play like 18 games. And if you made the playoffs, it could get to as many as like 21 games. And if you're somebody that was playing every one of those games and every minute in those games, you come into preseason for college spent. And so, that part of it, we didn't know exactly how that was going to play out in the first year. This year it's very different. Like we've got a very, we've planned for some players to leave and then other players to come in and replace them, based on when some of these guys end their finals and finish up school. So, there's some guys on the West Coast that'll be coming, maybe a third of the way through the summer that missed the first few games and that get here later. And then other guys that will be here for the first half of the summer that then have to leave. But that level should remain constant throughout the summer. And so that was kind of the biggest question mark going into last season. So it was like, we knew that guys were going to leave. It was whether or not we were going to be in a position to make the playoffs, when that happened. And then, there's obviously, some guys that didn't feature in games earlier in the year that stepped up and did an incredible job at the end of the season. I think that was the part that was a little bit harder to predict. We knew we would have a good team. But it's football, right? Like so many things can go right, so many things can go wrong. And you hope that you're strong enough to overcome kind of some of that stuff that comes up during the course of a year. It was close, obviously, at the end of the season. You'd like it to be a little bit more comfortable at the end of the year in terms of getting into the playoffs. But look, it was the drama was special, and it was unique that last day. And, I don't know if it could have worked out a whole lot better, to be fair. But yeah, I mean, obviously the goals this year we have moved a little bit, but, we could easily go 14-0. Not we can easily go 14-0. You could go 14-0 and lose that first game in the playoffs, and, we'd be one step behind where we were last year in a way. So, it can go a lot of different ways, but we knew the team would be strong. We just didn't know how things would kind of play out during the course of the season.
Were you surprised by the strength of the recruitment in the inaugural season? It is Vermont. It's quite far up north. It seems to be one of the smaller divisions in the USL2. It really seems like you attracted some top-level players. I know Ivo Bjorgolfsson was one of the top prospects in the league last year. So, and to have the first season to grab somebody like that seems pretty impressive.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that Matt and I talked about from the summer before. So the summer of 2021, that was part of what we had spoken about was how we would go out and recruit players. A lot of that was going to be done through relationships in college soccer, and not just necessarily, not so much targeting individual players, but targeting programs that we thought would want their players to be in the kind of environment that we were hoping to provide. And that was, our guys train at 9 o'clock every morning. There's a lot of USL2 clubs that don't do that. They'll train, guys will go to work all day, and then, we'll come for a training session at 7 o'clock at night. It's different for us. Like the guys that come here obviously for the experience of being in Vermont, the experience of, now this year they come for you guys, right? They come to play for the supporters, because that's obviously a game changer. But we believed that would happen. And so that was what we sold. What we sold was what, you guys and, Matt produced in terms of the uniforms and the visual identity of the club, and what Pat produced on the social media side. Those are the things that we sold to players. And, knowing that and having confidence that we were going to be able to also produce a really good training environment. And so we attracted serious soccer players that wanted, their central, the central reason why they were coming up here was to train and to play. And now they'll be able to see that they can play in like a really exciting environment. I mean, that part of it is unique in the Northeast for sure. There's other clubs, Des Moines and, Flint City and some of these places that have really good supporters. Lions Bridge, who we played last year, but there aren't many in the Northeast, if any. And so that part is incredibly unique. We thought we could attract players up here. Honestly, we did. We thought we could. But it was certainly different last year than it is this year. I mean, we have all the visuals and and everything that we sold last year. There are actual visuals for this year, which makes it a lot easier and a lot harder in other ways. We had to turn down a lot of really good guys that those were not comfortable conversations to have, obviously. So but those are the good problems to have. So yeah, I don't want to say I was surprised that we were able to attract people and players. Definitely, there's a lot of guys that had never been to Vermont before, but to a man, every single guy that we had last year that was still eligible to come back and play, that didn't sign pro contracts, like they all wanted to come back. And that's what we wanted. That's been the most, one of the most rewarding pieces of this is that players wanted to come back to Vermont, to our community, to the club, to the supporters, to the training environment, obviously. And, all that stuff's really, really been great.
And so, not to, cast any aspersions on the recruitment drive last year, but do you feel like the success and the proven concept of last season has allowed you to recruit from higher programs this year?
It's hard to recruit from much higher programs, to be honest. You look at what Vermont did this year, look at what Creighton did this year. You look at what, Cornell did this year, and Penn, and obviously we only had a couple, one guy from Penn, he didn't play last year, but you look at what all those programs did, Bilal at UNH, like those were all NCAA tournament teams. So yeah, I mean, it's opened up some doors. It's definitely opened up some doors, but we had guys coming from top programs already. So I think we'll be deeper this year. But it's soccer. You just never know how things are going to kind of shake out. But we're definitely, more set up this year for certainly for the end of the season and the playoffs if we can make it. We're definitely in a good place right now for that, but a lot can happen between now and then. So
I have like a kind of a chicken or the egg kind of question, and it kind of segues from your conversation about how you recruit players. But is your system as flexible as it needs to be in order to suit the players that you have or that you have recruited, or on the other side, are you specifically recruiting players to fit your system?
Yeah, so that changed a lot from this year to last year, or from last year to this year, I should say. Last year, one of the questions that I got from a lot of college coaches was like, "Well, what kind of players are you looking for?" And I was like, I don't know. We just want the best, like the most quality that we could possibly get, and we would figure out how we wanted to play, when everybody was here. We certainly, wanted this to be a possession oriented, attacking team, that was expansive. And we felt like, we knew going into the summer that, different than during the college season, the substitution rules are different and the weather is very different. And so that has a major impact on just the pacing of the game and how you want to play. And so we knew that going in, but I will say that this year, like, we recruited players that we thought would fit what developed last year from the team, in terms of, how we would build and how we would create, opportunities. And then, to be quite honest, like the defensive side of it was very secondary, whereas like in college, like that is like 1A for a lot of us, with how we want to kind of build our teams. But again, we want to entertain the fans, and we want the players to enjoy the football. And, to do that, we have to put an emphasis on being a possession oriented attacking team. And that's what we've done and what we'll hopefully continue to do, for most games that we play in. Obviously it's not going to be that way every game, but you hope it is in most games. So, last year, the answer is, we were just trying to bring in as many quality players as we could. This year, like, we were we had a pretty good idea of the kinds of players that we wanted in different spots, and targeted those guys within the different programs that we were recruiting from.
I think I said this on the podcast before, but you mentioned possession based ball, and I think for me, a lot of that begins not necessarily with a defense and being able to play out from the back, but with a strong midfield, and seeing guys like I like to call him one of our own, Charlie Adams, kind of blossom throughout the season. I felt that your attack came a lot from defensive midfielders, and being able to build up from actually the midfield, and that kind of allowed you guys to kind of settle in a little higher up on the defense, and not have to play so much of a park the bus against the stronger attacking teams. So how have you built your midfield around those returning midfielders that we have that you've actually brought back this year?
Yeah, so I mean, it'll be very similar, just in terms of the personnel, right? Like, with Dan and Rodri, and I think Alfredo will probably be back as well. And then, adding a couple guys, a guy like Giorgio Probo from Creighton's a fantastic passer and has tremendous passing range. So yeah, I mean, and on top of that, like I would go back even further to our, the center backs, and kind of how they set the table for our team. And I think, we bring back, Mark O'Neill will be back. And then, Obviously Jake Ashford is back. And adding guys like Nate Jones from Washington and Diego Ochoa from Boston College. I mean, he's a fantastic passer of the ball. He's got an amazing left foot. Same thing, Zach Barrett. Like, those guys are going to be setting the table for our attacking players. So that was a big requirement for us, was that all of our defenders could pass. And that's not, that's not necessarily the most important thing for everybody at the back, but for us it was. We felt like that was kind of the first quality that we wanted from our center backs, and then even our our wing backs, or our fullbacks are fantastic footballers, or at least we believe that they are. So guys like Nate Messer and Miguel Ventura, and I think everybody's going to love Bernardo Prego. Like, he's a fantastic footballer, like really attacking minded right back. We've got a couple guys from Washington that we haven't announced yet that are coming as well. So, I think it starts from those players, and even the goalkeepers being good. Nate Schnur and Nick, both like very good with their feet. So that's a big part of it, right? Like, so that was I think you'll see a similar style of play this year. Hopefully we can cut out some of the goals that we conceded in transition this year. That'll be more of an emphasis for sure, because we were pretty wide open at times. But we're excited to have players that we think can set the table really well for our midfielders and our attacking players.
So it sounds like you're pretty settled with some of the big names for the defense and the midfield, but are you still looking for those final pieces in the attack, or is that something that's been done and is not announced yet?
Yeah. I think, some of the players just haven't been announced yet. Like, we're pretty, we're in a good spot right now. Obviously you're always looking to add, high quality players and, guys that can help us win games. But I mean, guys like Gavork Diarbian is a fantastic player from Providence College, like really exciting attacking player. Zach Zengi from Georgetown, been playing at really high level. He's somebody that they're very excited about. We've got a couple forwards that we'll be announcing soon. A guy from Creighton, a former UVM player that'll be back, that hasn't been with us before. That's a really good attacking player. And then the kid Dennis from Davidson, and he's from Wisconsin. Like, he scored like 10 goals this year at Davidson as a freshman, and he's another guy that we're very excited about. So I don't want to miss anybody. There's a lot of really good players coming in those attacking areas, and we should be able to rotate the team throughout the summer. And it's exciting, and obviously exciting to not announce some of those guys in the coming days and weeks. But we feel like we're in a pretty good spot right now. Like I said, we're always looking, but we've had things in a pretty good spot since maybe the beginning, since February 1, really.
I think that one of our, I think that my favorite things about having a team that invites some guys back and brings in new guys every single year is that kind of anticipation. We're just getting that anticipation for the first time this year, but how we kind of, all of us in the Bahoys group kind of formed our own little fan clubs for each of the different players. And some of the folks loved Deba, and some of the folks we all loved Sammy. And I was a big fan of Charlie Adams myself, but I think that part of that anticipation of who's coming and who's going to be the way that the team and the club is releasing player names that are coming into the club is really exciting. And it also actually allows a lot of us, like fanboys, the chance to kind of do our YouTube research on the players and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I think you guys have done a great job of bringing in new talent and bringing back some of the old talent, and I'm sure that's really going to help you guys to um, be able to, like, the new guys to be able to understand the system the way that you envision it. Um, but I just want to commend you guys, like, on your choice of players, and from what I've seen through my YouTube research, and a couple of the guys from Rhode Island, and Nate out from Washington, like, he was super impressive to watch on YouTube, but you don't get a lot of super highlights, out of NCAA soccer. But I'm just very excited, and I'm very interested to see how the little fan bases kind of develop throughout our season here.
Yeah,
But
it's incredibly exciting. I mean, that's and the Green Mountain Boys and all the supporters that we've had, like, honestly, like, that was a very big selling point for us this year, and was that experience, that professional kind of experience for our players that they don't necessarily get in their colleges, and for a lot of them, like I remember, like, the Creighton guys walking off the field after the first game last year, they get massive crowds on a consistent basis at Creighton, but they were like, this is crazy, like, just because the energy was different and it was consistent and there was noise, and it was just, for those guys, like, they were hooked from that first game against BlackRock at home. Like, all the guys were excited about that, and it helps us. We have a really good carrot to kind of get the most out of, all of our players. They want to be in the 18 for those games. And it's the hard part of the job for me and Chris and Stage and the guys on the staff is kind of, picking who's going to play in each game. And that part of it is hard, but that competition is what that competition every day at training is what is going to help these guys kind of progress in their careers. That was one of the best experiences that I had as a player, was when I was playing for the Cape Cod Crusaders, was I wanted to be the left winger. That's where I wanted to play, because I was right-footed and I wanted to be able to cut in, score goals. And so I had to, like, fight for that spot. And I had Felix Briant, who played professionally for years, that wanted that spot, and he played for the Revs and played overseas, and I think he played for the Impact a little bit before they were an MLS club. And there were a couple other guys that actually got drafted in that year that I had to, like, fight off every day at training. And having that kind of sense of urgency to be able to get your spot or keep your spot, that's huge for these players to continue to progress and get what they want out of this experience, which is a lot of things. But the number one hook that kind of brings them in is the opportunity to play and improve through the course of the summer, because I'd say 99% of these guys, maybe there's one or two that don't want to be, that their goals are not to be professionals, but it's 100%. That's where they all want to be. So that's why they come here for the summer, and are a big part of the reason. So
speaking of the crowds, so how do you manage the players in away games? Because obviously the approach is different, where you don't have the energy boost from the crowd.
Yeah, I think these guys are pretty. I was impressed with how professional they were from game to game. Even just starting the first game that we played against Boston City, like, they were already pretty, like, in love with the club right away, just based on the feeling that they got for the first, we had a week of training essentially, and then we played a game. We didn't have any friendlies or anything like that. So they're very professional. They go down to do a job. We didn't do as well on the road, to be honest. Like we dropped some points that we shouldn't have, but it wasn't really for poor performance. It was just games where things just kind of didn't go our way, and we were a little bit unlucky. Even the game that we lost at BlackRock, like, it could have been 2 or 3-0 for us early in that game, and so those things will happen, but we don't have to do a ton to motivate them to be professional with how they they go about, preparing and playing a match. The guys were great.
I I have to say that like I think the most fun games that I watched were games in which you guys didn't come out on top with Seacoast games. Um, I think they were the most hard fought games. And I think were they both 1-0? Was that
2-1 and 1-0, yeah.
2-1 and 1-0?
2-1 at
Okay.
home, and it was 1-0 on the road, yeah.
And I didn't actually know what Seacoast was all about until this year, when my son got to play in their tournament in Maine.
Yeah.
And going up and seeing all the different Seacoast youth teams coming up, and then my son obviously asked me, are they the same club? And I said yeah. And I said that's how they do some of their recruiting, and they bring those kids up through, and then they have the academy, and they have, I've noticed a lot of these USL2 teams, but just by doing some research, just basic Google research, have a lot of these youth clubs they're kind of affiliated with, or they have their own youth clubs. Does having and this is just as a parent of a youth player, does having these youth clubs help you to recruit from within state as well? Like, we have so many around here.
Yeah.
I know Farpost is kind of like trying to develop like an academy kind of system, and where they're going. I think they have some great ideas going forward, but like, I guess, yeah, I'll let you answer the question instead of cutting you off again.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously our thing is a little different from, Seacoast or the Bolts. The Bolts was my youth club. That's who I played for growing up. It's who I coached for, back in Boston when I was there. So, the Bolts, Western Mass, like those clubs all have youth clubs, and so there are some players that are just going to play for those clubs regardless of what other experiences might be out there. Like, they're going to play for the club that they grew up playing for. We had a handful of players from that grew up playing for the Bolts, right? Like, so Jack Clorty played for the Bolts. Owen O'Malley had actually played for them the year before, but he wasn't a Bolts player. But Joe Morrison played, grew up playing for the Bolts. There were a couple other guys as well that had experience playing, with that club. So yeah, it was it's it's something that we hope to have more and more players from Vermont in the future. It's not easy. Like, we obviously have to compete at a certain level. And so, the players that we're going to sign for the team need to be at that level. And Oliver Martin obviously is one, and, Charlie Adams is not really from our sort of local soccer scene. He's more, down in the New Hampshire area where he was playing. But yeah, I mean, hopefully in the future, there'll be more and more players, and look, like, part of what we hope to help do is give that sort of vision and that pathway to the young local players, and that belief that they could play for the Vermont Green, and it is like a really exciting kind of experience to be able to play in front of 2,500 people at Virtue Field, in front of your family and friends. Like that's a pretty cool, unique thing. And for some kids, that'll be enough motivation to maybe make a commitment to being a serious soccer player at 13, 14, 15 when it's required. So hopefully we can be a part of that. And it'd be great to have more and more sort of youth, local youth players that we see come from those clubs that play for us in the future.
I can say, like I said, as a parent, like I just and a fan, just love seeing the engagement you guys have with these youth clubs. It's really a huge thing for these kids, even though 90% of them are out in the back playing on the field out back, but during the games. But like, these kids get together, and I can say, like, I'm going to shout out my son and his buddy Noah, who who think they're going to be Vermont Green players in the future. So
That's awesome.
both at 10 years old. So
Yeah, that's great.
it's,
I mean,
it's pretty great. And I said, you're going to have to get through stage first, but
yeah. And again, for me, like it was, I don't remember what the league was called. Was that I don't remember what it was called back then, but the Boston Bolts were the professional team in the area where I grew up. They played at Nickerson Field at Boston University, and that was before the Revolution were around. And I used to go to all those games and be a ball boy and do everything that I could to be around those players. So that was kind of my experience.
Was that the league with like Baltimore Blast and that kind of? I think
they played against the only team I remember them playing against was the New Jersey Eagles.
Okay.
And that was because my college coach was the coach of that team. And then my club coach had played for the Bolts, Brian Ainscough, who actually directs he's the director of the Bolts now. And he played for them years ago, and then I played for him with the Bolts, and then worked with him with the Eagles, and then went to Boston College and played for Ed Kelly, who was the coach of the New Jersey Eagles team. And so it was exciting, like going to those games when I was a kid. So I remember what that was like. And now we have that in our community, which is wonderful.
Ooh, we have a listener question. This is great. I love listener questions. My other podcast doesn't get so many listener questions because half of our fan base is overseas. But
Gotcha.
The question comes from Tyson, and it says, "What would it mean to this team if we managed to sell out home games on a regular basis, and how much energy does a packed house bring to the players?"
Yeah, it's a total game changer. I think we didn't know that the game against Western Mass was going to sell out until like probably a few hours before. It was like, this place can be sold out, and they're going to have to turn people away. And we told the guys that in the locker room, we're like, get ready. It was hot. We had a bunch of players that were no longer that had left to go on vacations before their college seasons, at that point. And obviously Western Mass was coming in on this big winning streak. And, we were going to have to, we had to shuffle some things around. We were going to have to play very different than the way we had played, during the regular, during the body of the season. And I do think, like, without the fans that day, like, do you get through those difficult physical moments, as a game goes on? It's really hot. And like Owen O'Malley that day was so sick. Like, he didn't train the day before. He was throwing up all night the night before. And he was just like he played 45 minutes in that game. And like, after like 20 minutes, he was cooked. He was absolutely cooked. And, we needed him to get to halftime, and he did. And so, yeah, I mean, it would have a massive impact on our team. And that's the hope, right? Is that we do sell out games during the regular, during the beginning of the season, through the middle of the season, because, that kind of energy is infectious for the players. It's intimidating for the opposition, and it gives us a massive advantage. Like, you can't overstate how important the fan support is. I think, like I said, like about the away games, like the guys are very professional, and their focus and all that stuff is going to be on point regardless. But when things get uncomfortable, when you're tired and you need that little bit of a pick me up, like, the fans are there to provide that, and it makes all the difference in the world.
We got another listener question from Robert, who says, "What away game would the boys most be needed at?" So, traveling support, where would you want to see everybody come down?
Man, that's a good one. I mean, look, there's the Bolts, Seacoast, and Western Mass. Like those are obviously really difficult games for us. I mean, obviously the Seacoast one is probably a shorter trip. The Western Mass, like, that stadium is super cool. I've used to go to games as a kid in that stadium to watch the Pioneers play. It's they're the closest thing to what we have in terms of sort of the atmosphere during game day. And it's such a cool old stadium. In the best soccer community in Massachusetts, in fairness, Ludlow, like it's always been a really cool soccer community. It's a really big Portuguese community there. And you walk in and there's a big statue of Eusebio when you walk in, and it's just a cool place to play a game. Like you go in, we were in the bottom of the locker rooms are like, they were probably built in the 60s or something, or the 70s, and they're just like, very old, and the guys were all like, what's going on here? And this is and I was like, this is awesome. Like it was like being in the the movie Victory with Sylvester Stallone and Pele and them, like just in this weird locker room in underneath the stadium. And it was awesome. So look, any place where we can have our supporters there with us, huge bonus. But I think that the trips that our supporters would enjoy the most would be, Western Mass, the Bold Seacoast, like, just because of the natural rivalries that are kind of developing. But the Western Mass trip's that's a pretty cool place to go watch a soccer game.
I can tell you that I'm not muted him. Okay. I have a tendency to mute. But I can tell you that we do have a small contingent that is already on board for the Bolts game So for your first match, you're gonna have a bunch of us there.
Yeah, that's great. I got a lot of stick from the Bolts brass during that game last year, just because my ties there are incredibly strong. I'm a lot of the most important people in my life still involved in that club, and actually my college roommate is coaching that team this year, so there's a little bit extra on the line right out of the gate. So yeah, we need to win those games, otherwise I'm gonna be hearing it. So he's actually a season ticket holder. He's actually a Vermont Green season ticket holder that's coaching another team. So
I hope they're gonna be in for a shock then.
Yeah.
Because when Christian takes that goalie shirt off and shows his bony little body to the rest of the people there and shouts with his bike hat on, it's gonna get real then.
It'll be good. We can't wait.
So a question we asked last week of one of our guests, or not last week, 2 weeks ago. What's your favorite flavor of creamy? And obviously, do you know what a creamy is?
Of course, I know what a creamy is. I'm a chocolate vanilla twist guy.
All right, there you go. Yeah. All right, Debo had no idea what it was.
That's my fault. We'll take them. We'll take them to get creamies as a team this year.
It'll be a team trip. Instead of going to the beach for a day, you can you can get the creamies.
Yeah, we'll get that taken care of right off the bat this year. That where I'm from, that was called soft serve, but I know that they're actually creamies now.
Yeah, they're all creamies up here. Yeah. And the correct answer is maple, by the way, just so you know.
I like maple too.
You can do maple black raspberry twist. That's fine as well.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So
yeah. the maple chocolate twist is good too. I the black raspberry, I don't like fruit in my ice cream. I think that's true. But yeah.
So I guess we're coming up on time, but I just have one more question for you. As far as like sponsorships go, and having the beer sponsored, having the ice cream sponsored doesn't necessarily scream like fitness. But they're both things that are kind of uniquely Vermont.
Yep.
How does that like play in, and not necessarily to the health of the club as far as like fitness health, but like the health of the club, like long term, like developing relationships that you're going to have long term with the club. Obviously, like Sun Common is your main kit sponsor, but you have Burlington Beer and you have Ben and Jerry's. Like how big is that sponsorship for the club? Those sponsorships for the club?
Yeah, honestly a tough one for me to answer because I'm not as involved in that
Right.
area. That's not really my department. What I would say is that as a Vermonter and as somebody that loves this community, like having Ben and Jerry's as a sponsor is just exciting. Like, I grew up in Boston, like, but I know what Ben and Jerry's is. Um, and then getting here, and to be quite honest, like the culture around IPAs and the beer that's created here. Yeah, me too. So I
Yep.
got a little sip here.
Oh, little
Um,
sip. All right. I went with
so
the BB Co's Super Lemon Haze tonight.
yeah, I should have grabbed myself a BBQ tonight, but that culture, like honestly, it is very Vermont. It is one of the things that people come here for. I will say, like I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but Jamie Clark, right, who's the head coach at Washington, was in town recently, and he literally went from like White River Junction all the way up to Burlington and stopped at like every brewery on the way and sent it all back to Seattle where he lives. And so yeah, it's a big part of the community, and something that obviously I enjoy quite a bit. It's and it's not healthy. The Ben and Jerry's and the local beer has definitely, I've been here for 8 years. It's definitely stuck with me, right? But it is Vermont, and it is some really just like high quality, like it's very representative of the quality that we produce here, I think. And like, look, there's no better ice cream than Ben and Jerry's. Like, it doesn't exist. I haven't found it. People come from all, like, I live in Waterbury, and so I live right down the street from the factory, and that place is packed all the time. So I live down the street from the Alchemist and all these places, and it's such a cool part of our community, and people enjoy it, and it's social, and the way that those companies tend to operate, at least the ones that we work with, are very in line with the club's mission around being an environmentally friendly and sustainable club, and that's very much what Vermont is about, right? So there's a lot of synergy there. It's all very in line with what Vermont is about, and it's pretty cool. But again, like, the quality of those companies, right? It's like there's more to them than just what they produce. Like there's more to the people that work there, and the way that they take care of their employees, and the way that they give back to their communities. So it's yeah, I you'd have to talk with Matt and Sam and Pat about that, in a little bit more depth, but it's not lost on us on the technical side, sort of some of those relationships and how important they are for our club, and how representative those companies are of our values. I think it's really important.
Good. Yeah. Will, you got any last thoughts, my friend?
Well, I guess the question for you is, and maybe, your answer on this is limited, but where do you see the program in the next 5 years?
That's a hard